David froze as the knock at his apartment door echoed through the silence. He hadn't seen her in years, not since the day he walked away from the life he thought he knew. Slowly, he opened the door, and there she was. Sarah stood before him, her eyes filled with regret, her voice trembling. "David," she whispered, "I've been searching for you. Please, just to hear me out." His chest tightened, memories of betrayal flooding back. Could he even face the woman who shattered everything? But before diving deeper into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you're enjoying this dramatic tale, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story. David Callahan was a man of quiet strength, his calm demeanor grounding the family. He had the gentle confidence of someone who had built a life with intention, a man whose priority was his family. His mornings were a reflection of that. He found peace in the mundane routines that framed his days. The kitchen was his favorite spot, a place where he could enjoy the laughter of his son and the companionship of his wife. Sarah was the heart of the home, always bustling with energy and purpose. Her laughter could fill a room, and her presence brought warmth to the house. This morning, she moved gracefully between the stove and the sink, her focus on preparing breakfast. Her humming added a soothing undertone to the morning's melody. Noah, the light of their lives, was a spirited child. His infectious laughter and boundless curiosity were the glue that held the family together. His playful chatter filled the house, making every day brighter. Together, they painted the picture of a perfect family. But as David unfolded the document in his hands, a fissure began to form in that picture, a crack that would soon threaten to shatter the foundation of everything he held dear. David's fingers trembled slightly as he unfolded the document, his curiosity piqued by its unfamiliarity. The bold letters at the top of the page caught his eye. DNA test results. The heading alone sent a ripple of unease through him, but he brushed it off. He assumed it was a mistake, some mix-up that didn't concern him. Yet, something made him pause. The numbers and percentages on the page blurred momentarily as his mind struggled to process what he was seeing. His eyes scanned the document, searching for clarity, until they landed on the final, unmistakable line. Paternity, negative. The words hit him like a physical blow. Time seemed to slow as his mind raced to comprehend the meaning. His grip tightened on the paper, his knuckles whitening. Noah Callahan was not his biological son. Wheeler wasn't just any other man's father. His father had been his biological son. The kitchen, once filled with warmth and light, suddenly felt cold and foreign. The hum of the coffee maker, the sound of Sarah's humming, and even Noah's laughter became distant and hollow. His chest tightened as the weight of the revelation pressed down on him, suffocating and relentless. He reread the line over and over, hoping he had misunderstood, but the truth remained unyielding. "Dara," he whispered, his voice barely audible, the single word carrying a mixture of disbelief and anguish. The scraping of the chair against the floor startled Sarah, who turned to him with a smile that quickly faltered when she saw his expression. "David?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern, setting the spatula down. He couldn't speak, he couldn't move. He simply held out the paper, his hand shaking. The silence that followed was deafening, heavy with unspoken accusations and mounting dread. Sarah's eyes darted to the document, her face paling as she read the words. Tears welled up almost instantly, her voice trembling as she broke the silence. "David, I can explain." The room seemed to tilt, the once familiar space now unrecognizable. David's heart pounded, anger and hurt warring within him. The life he thought he knew, the love he had trusted, was crumbling before his eyes. "What is this, Sarah?" he demanded, his voice breaking. "What have you done?" Her words stumbled over each other, a frantic attempt to explain, but David could barely hear her. The trust that had anchored their life together was gone, replaced by a chasm of betrayal. The laughter from the living room felt like an intrusion, a cruel reminder of the innocence now tainted by the revelation. David's hands trembled as he set the paper down, his gaze locked on Sarah, waiting for an explanation that could never make this right. His voice was low, hoarse, barely above a whisper, but it carried a weight that made the air in the kitchen grow heavy. Sarah, humming softly as she worked over the stove, didn't notice the change at first. She turned toward him, her smile fading the instant she saw his expression. "David?" she asked, concern creeping into her tone. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he picked up the paper again, holding it out to her with a hand that shook so violently he could barely keep the page steady. "Explain this," he said, his voice cracking under the strain of barely restrained anger. Sarah's eyes flicked to the document. The moment she recognized what it was, her entire demeanor changed. Her face paled, the color draining from her cheeks, as if the blood had been pulled from her body. Her hands, still holding the spatula, froze in midair before dropping it to the counter with a loud clang. "David," she began, her voice trembling, I can explain." "Explain?" David's voice was louder now, edged with raw anger that even he couldn't control. "Explain how the boy I've been raising, the boy I've called my son, isn't mine. Explain how you've been lying to me. How long, Sarah? How long have you known?" "I didn't want you to find out like this," she said softly, tears welling in her eyes as she stepped toward him. He took a step back, holding up a hand to stop her. Don't come any closer." His jaw tightened as he fought to keep his emotions in check, but the words tumbled out in a torrent. "You've let me believe he was mine for years, Sarah. Years. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Her tears began to fall freely now, streaking her cheeks as she clutched her hands together. "It was a mistake, David. I swear, it was a mistake. A moment of weakness, and I didn't know how to fix it." "A mistake?" he repeated, his voice rising in disbelief. "A mistake? You call this a mistake? You've destroyed everything, Sarah. Everything. How do you expect me to move past this?" "I didn't mean for this to happen," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean to hurt you. Please, David, you have to believe me." "I don't have to believe anything," he shot back, his voice shaking with the intensity of his emotions. "I trusted you, Sarah. I built a life with you, with Noah. And now, you're telling me it was all a lie?" "It wasn't a lie," she cried. "I love you, David. I love Noah. That's real." David let out a bitter laugh, his anger bubbling to the surface. "Real? You want to talk about what's real? This document is real. The fact that he's not my son is real, and the fact that you betrayed me, that's as real as it gets." The silence that followed was suffocating. Sarah stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, her lips trembling as if she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. David stared at her, his chest rising and falling with labored breaths. "I can't do this right now," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. He turned away from her, his mind clouded with rage and heartbreak. "I need space. I need time to think." "David, please," Sarah called after him, her voice breaking. "Don't walk away. Don't give up on us." But David was already moving, the walls of the house he had once called home closing in on him. He grabbed his jacket and walked out the door, letting it slam shut behind him, the sound echoing through the hollow emptiness of the life he thought he knew. David paced the kitchen, the DNA test trembling in his hand as he turned back toward Sarah, his voice cut through the tense air like a knife. "Sarah, what is this?" He thrust the paper toward her, his hand shaking not just with anger, but with disbelief. Sarah turned to face him, her brow furrowing as she looked at the document. Her face went pale, and the color drained from her cheeks as her eyes scanned the words. She froze, her lips parting as if to speak, but no sound came. Sarah trembled. "David, Dawn, what is this? How long have you known? How long have you been lying to me?" Sarah took a hesitant step toward him, her hands outstretched, as though she could calm the storm brewing in his chest. "Sarah, I didn't mean for you to find out like this. I was going to tell you." "Tell me? Tell me what, Sarah? That the boy I've raised, loved, and called my son isn't mine? That you've been keeping this from me for God knows how long?" "Sarah, it was a mistake, David. I made a mistake. A terrible, horrible mistake. Please, just let me explain." "Haha, David, you think this is just a mistake? Do you even understand what you've done? You've destroyed everything, Sarah. Everything." Sarah's tears spilled freely now, her voice breaking as she tried to hold herself together. "Sarah, I know, David. I know I've hurt you. I've hurt us. But I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't want to lose you." David let out a bitter laugh, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "David, fix it? You thought you could just sweep this under the rug and everything would be fine? You let me build my life around a lie, around Noah, and now you want me to just, what? Pretend this never happened?" "I wasn't trying to deceive you, David. I swear, I wasn't. David slammed the paper down on the counter, cutting her off. "Then what were you trying to do, Sarah? Because from where I'm standing, all I see is a betrayal so deep I don't even recognize you anymore." Sarah took another step forward, her hands shaking as she clutched the edge of the counter for support. "Sarah, it wasn't like that. I was lonely, David. You were working so much. We were drifting apart and don't you dare blame this on me. Don't you dare try to make this my fault. Sarah, I'm not blaming you. I'm just trying to make you understand. I made a mistake, David. I was weak and I let my insecurities get the better of me. But it wasn't planned. It wasn't meant to hurt you." David's voice cracked, his anger barely masking the deep hurt beneath it. "David, you didn't mean to hurt me." "Sarah, this isn't just about me. It's about Noah. Did you ever stop to think about him? About how this would affect him if the truth came out?" Sarah held Lance's hand, breathing in deep breaths to shelter herself. "I thought about it every single day, and I was terrified. Terrified of losing you, of losing the family we'd built." David's chest heaved as he struggled to keep his emotions in check. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the guilt etched into her face, the tears streaking her cheeks. But it wasn't enough to erase the betrayal. "David, you should have been terrified of what keeping this secret would do to us, to him. You didn't just make a mistake, Sarah, you made a choice, and now we all have to live with the consequences." Sarah sank to the floor, her sobs racking her body as she covered her face with her hands. "Sarah, I'm sorry, David. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make this right. Just, please don't walk away from us. Don't walk away from Noah." David stared down at her, his heart torn between the love he once felt for the woman before him and the unbearable weight of her betrayal. "David, I don't even know who you are anymore, Sarah, and I don't know if I can stay in a marriage built on lies. Right now, I need space. I need time to figure out what the hell I'm supposed to do with the pieces you've left me." Sarah looked up at him, her tear-streaked face etched with despair. "Sarah, please, David, don't give up on us. Don't give up on him." David turned away, unable to look at her any longer. "David, I've already lost so much, Sarah. Don't ask me to lose myself, too." He walked out of the kitchen, leaving Sarah on the floor, the sound of her sobs echoing in the house that now felt irreparably broken. David stumbled out of the house, the door slamming shut behind him with a force that echoed in the quiet morning air. He hadn't even grabbed a jacket, the chill biting at his skin as he stood on the front steps, his breath coming in short, shallow bursts. His head was spinning, his thoughts a chaotic whirlwind of disbelief and anger. The weight of the truth pressed heavily on his chest, suffocating him with each passing second. He took a shaky step forward, his feet moving instinctively, though he had no idea where he was going. The streets were alive with the usual morning bustle, an indifferent normalcy that seemed to mock the turmoil inside him. A jogger passed by, earbuds in, oblivious to the man whose world had just crumbled. A mother pushed a stroller, chatting animatedly on her phone, her laughter grating against the rawness of David's emotions. David's gaze darted around, taking in the scenes of life continuing as if nothing had changed. But for him, everything had changed. The ground beneath his feet felt unsteady, as if he were teetering on the edge of a cliff. His heart ached with a hollow, gnawing emptiness that refused to let him breathe fully. He walked aimlessly, his hands buried deep in his pockets, his shoulders hunched against the cold. The sounds of the world, cars passing, distant chatter, a barking dog, faded into a dull hum. All he could hear was the echo of Sarah's words, her tearful confessions replaying in his mind like a broken record. The bustling streets seemed worlds away from the storm raging inside him. Bright storefronts displayed cheerful holiday decorations, and the smell of freshly baked bread wafted from a nearby bakery. Two children laughed as they chased each other down the sidewalk, their innocence a painful reminder of what David had just lost. He paused at the edge of a crosswalk, watching as cars stopped and started in an orderly rhythm. The simplicity of it, the predictability, felt foreign, almost cruel. How could life around him move on so effortlessly when his own had come to a screeching halt? He felt like an outsider, a ghost wandering through a world that no longer made sense. David clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms as he fought to keep the tears at bay. He couldn't cry, not here, not now. Instead, he walked on, his feet carrying him further from the home that no longer felt like his own. David's new apartment was a stark contrast to the home he had left behind. It was small, barely furnished, and devoid of any personal touch. The walls were an uninviting shade of off-white, and the single window in the living room offered a view of the alley below. A threadbare couch sat in the corner, next to a coffee table that had seen better days. The only other furniture was a bed pushed against the wall and a cheap dining table with mismatched chairs. It wasn't much, but it was all David could bring himself to accept. The silence in the apartment was deafening. The absence of Noah's laughter, the hum of Sarah's presence, and the small noises that had once filled his life left a void he couldn't ignore. David sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the empty walls. The echoes of his family's life, the Saturday mornings making pancakes, the bedtime stories with Noah, the shared glances with Sarah, played in his mind like a cruel film he couldn't turn off. Each night, he lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling. The quiet was oppressive, amplifying every thought, every memory. He had left the house to escape the betrayal, but here, in this barren apartment, he was left alone with it. The reality of what he had lost loomed over him, suffocating and relentless. David picked up his phone, scrolling through old photos of Noah. There was one of them at the park, Noah grinning widely as he sat on David's shoulders. Another showed Noah proudly holding up a drawing he'd made for Father's Day, the words, "Best Dad," scribbled in crayon at the top. The memories were like daggers, each one a reminder of the bond he had believed was unbreakable. He set the phone down, unable to look any longer. The weight of the truth, that Noah wasn't his son by blood, pressed on him like a physical burden. But it wasn't just the DNA test that hurt. It was everything else. The lies. The years of devotion built on a foundation that Sarah had shattered with her betrayal. David ran a hand through his hair, his chest tightening as the pain threatened to overwhelm him. He thought of Noah's small hands gripping his as they walked to school, the way he'd run to David after scoring a goal at soccer practice, his voice full of pride as he called out, "Dad!" How could any of it have been a lie? The apartment felt colder with each passing day. David avoided unpacking most of his belongings. The act felt too permanent, as though settling in would mean admitting that his old life was truly over. He ate meals alone at the small table, the sound of his fork scraping the plate the only noise in the room. He tried to distract himself with work, throwing himself into long hours. But even there, the memories followed him. A coworker mentioning their son's first baseball game would bring a pang of longing and guilt. Seeing a child on the street would remind him of Noah's laugh, his bright eyes filled with trust. One night, unable to sleep, David sat by the window, a cup of coffee growing cold in his hands. He stared out at the street below, watching as people went about their lives. A father walked hand in hand with his daughter, their quiet conversation punctuated by her laughter. David's chest ached as he imagined Noah in her place, his small hand fitting perfectly in his own. David couldn't escape the memories, no matter how hard he tried. The apartment felt like a prison, the silence a constant reminder of everything he had lost. Each moment alone forced him to confront the truth. His family was gone, broken by lies he couldn't forgive. He thought about Sarah's tearful pleas, the way she had begged him to stay, to forgive her. But forgiveness felt impossible. How could he forgive the woman who had taken away the one thing he had loved most? How could he trust her again after the secrets she had kept? And yet it wasn't Sarah's face that haunted him the most. It was Noah's, the boy who had looked up to him with unfiltered love and trust, the boy who still called him Dad, even when the truth had made it clear that he wasn't. David buried his face in his hands, the weight of his emotions crashing down on him. He didn't know how to move forward. The pain was too fresh, the memories too vivid. All he could do was sit in the quiet, hoping that one day the emptiness wouldn't feel so heavy. The knock on the door startled David from his thoughts. He glanced at the clock. It was late, and he wasn't expecting anyone. Reluctantly, he rose from the couch, the floor creaking under his weight. As he opened the door, he was met with a familiar face. "Lily," he said, his tone a mix of surprise and irritation. Sarah's best friend stood there, her expression soft but firm. "David," she replied gently, "can I come in?" He hesitated, his instinct to shut the door and retreat into the solitude that had become his norm. But something in Lily's eyes stopped him. With a sigh, he stepped aside and motioned for her to enter. The apartment was sparse, its lack of warmth a sharp contrast to the home they had all once shared. Lily's gaze swept over the room, lingering on the unopened boxes in the corner. She didn't comment, but her expression spoke volumes. "You didn't have to come," David said, crossing his arms. "I did," Lily replied. She took a seat on the worn couch, looking up at him with an unwavering resolve. "I couldn't just sit by and watch you fall apart, not when there's so much at stake." David scoffed, leaning against the wall. "What's at stake? Everything's already gone, Lily. My marriage, my trust, my family, my life and my job, and my best friend. Think about it." Lily shook her head, her voice calm but firm. "Not everything, David. Noah's still here. He's still your son." David's chest tightened at the mention of Noah. He looked away, his jaw clenching. "Is he?" "He's not mine, Lily, not by blood. And every time I think about it, it feels like everything I thought I had was a lie." Lily stood, closing the distance between them. "Noah doesn't care about blood, David. He cares about you. You're the one who's been there for him every single day, the one who's taught him, loved him, protected him. You are his father. Don't let your anger take that away from him." David shook his head, his voice raw. "You think it's that simple? You think I can just forget everything Sarah did? She lied to me, Lily. She let me believe Noah was mine for years. How do I move past that?" Lily placed a hand on his arm, her touch grounding him for a moment. "I'm not asking you to forgive Sarah. That's your choice, and it'll take time. But don't let her mistakes ruin what you have with Noah. He's innocent in all of this, David. He needs you now more than ever." David's eyes glistened as he struggled to keep his emotions in check. "I don't even know where to start, Lily. Every time I look at him, I see the truth. And it hurts." Lily's voice softened, filled with compassion. "Then start with love. Start with the bond you already have with him. Noah doesn't see the truth the way you do. He sees his dad, the man who's always been there for him. Don't let your pain take that away from him or from yourself. David sank into the couch, burying his face in his hands. I don't know if I can do it, he whispered. You can, Lily said, sitting beside him, because you love him. And love is stronger than anger, stronger than betrayal. It's the one thing that can help you both heal. David sat in silence, Lily's words echoing in his mind. He thought of Noah's laugh, the way his eyes lit up when David called him buddy, the way he had always run to him, no matter what. Finally, he looked up at Lily, his voice quiet but resolute. I don't know if I can fix everything, but I'll try. For Noah. Lily smiled, her expression a mix of relief and encouragement. That's all he needs, David, for you to try. The room grew quiet again, but this time, the silence didn't feel as heavy. For the first time in weeks, David felt a small flicker of hope, a path forward, however uncertain, for him and Noah. David's phone buzzed on the counter, breaking the stillness of the room. He glanced at it, expecting another work email or a notification he could ignore, but the name on the screen froze him in place. Michael Harris. His hand hovered over the phone before he swiped to open the message. Michael. David, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but there's something you need to know. This has been weighing on me for a long time, and I can't stay silent anymore. It's about Noah. David's chest tightened as he read the next lines. It said, Michael, I'm involved in Noah's life more than you realize. He deserves the truth, and so do you. I know this will hurt, but I've always felt like I had to step back for his sake. Maybe it's time we both face the reality of what this means for him and for us. Standing over me, he gives me a one smile before staring into my eyes. David read the message twice, his breath quickening. He stared at the words, his mind racing with questions. What did Michael mean by involved? How dare he imply that he had a role in Noah's life? A life David had poured everything into. David's blood boiled as he reread the message, his hands gripping the phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. His jaw clenched, and a deep, simmering anger began to rise within him. He had tolerated enough. Sarah's betrayal, the truth about Noah's paternity. But this was too much. He typed furiously, the screen barely keeping up with his fingers. David, what the hell are you talking about, Michael? You don't get to rewrite history and claim some role in Noah's life. He's my son. I've been there for him every single day. You've done nothing but destroy everything we had. He hit send, his heart pounding as he paced the room. His mind raced with memories of Noah, his first steps, the way he called him dad with such innocence, the countless bedtime stories and scraped knees he had tended to. Michael's words echoed in his mind like a cruel taunt. I've been more involved in Noah's life than you realize. Jimmy? Involved, what does that even mean? A few moments of weakness with Sarah and now you think you're entitled to my son? He stared at his phone, waiting for a reply, his rage only growing. He couldn't let Michael undermine the bond he had with Noah, couldn't let this man stake a claim on the child he had raised and loved. David grabbed his coat and stepped outside, needing air to cool the fire inside him. But as he paced the sidewalk, his anger refused to subside. His role as Noah's father was all he had left, the one connection that still felt real. And now Michael was threatening that, too? David, he's my son. You don't get to take that from me. The cold air bit at his skin, but it couldn't chill the storm raging within him. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. David knew one thing for certain. He wouldn't let anyone, least of all Michael, rewrite the truth of his relationship with Noah. David sat on the edge of his bed, the silence of the apartment heavy around him. The day's events had drained him, leaving him a shell of the man he used to be. He was lost in thought when a soft knock on the door broke his reverie. He knew who it was before he even answered. Opening the door, he found Noah standing there, his small frame silhouetted in the dim hallway light. His son's eyes, usually so bright with mischief and curiosity, were now clouded with uncertainty and fear. "Dad?" Noah's voice trembled, and David's heart clenched at the sound. "Come in, buddy," David said softly, stepping aside to let him in. Noah hesitated for a moment, then walked into the room, his movements tentative, as if he was afraid of being scolded. Noah climbed onto the bed, sitting cross-legged while nervously fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. His eyes didn't meet David's, instead fixed on the floor. "He's in true?" Noah finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. David's stomach dropped. He knew this moment was coming, but had hoped he could shield Noah from the harsh truths of the situation for a little longer. "Is what true, son?" David asked, his tone gentle, though he dreaded the answer. "I heard you and Mom," Noah said, his voice breaking. "You said I'm not really your son." Tears welled up in his eyes, spilling over as he choked on his words. "Does that mean—" "You're not my dad anymore." David froze, the question cutting through him like a knife. He moved closer, sinking to his knees so he was eye level with Noah. His hands rested on the boy's small shoulders. "Noah," he said firmly, his voice thick with emotion, "listen to me. I am your dad. I've always been your dad, and I always will be. Nothing changes that." Noah looked up at him, his tears falling freely now. "But you said I'm not yours." David's heart shattered at the pain in Noah's voice. He cupped his son's face gently, forcing him to look into his eyes. "You are mine, Noah," David said, his voice trembling. "You have been mine since the day you were born. I was there for your first steps, your first words, every scraped knee and bedtime story. I don't care about what a piece of paper says. You're my son. Do you hear me? You're my son." Noah sniffled, his small hands gripping David's shirt as if he was afraid to let go. "But Mom said—" "Michael." David closed his eyes, fighting the anger that threatened to bubble to the surface. This wasn't the time to let his feelings for Sarah or Michael interfere. This moment was about Noah. "It doesn't matter what anyone else says," David said softly, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "I'm the one who's always been here for you. I'm the one who loves you more than anything in the world, and I always will. Nothing can ever take that away." Noah's tears slowed, his breathing evening out as he leaned into David's chest. "You promise?" David wrapped his arms around Noah, holding him close as if to shield him from the chaos outside their little bubble. "I promise," he whispered. "No matter what happens, you'll always have me." For a long time they sat there in silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on both of them. David stroked Noah's hair, his own tears falling silently as he realized just how much he needed this moment too. "You're my hero, Dad," Noah said softly, his voice muffled against David's chest. David smiled weakly, his heart aching but full at the same time. "You're mine too, buddy. Always." As Noah drifted off to sleep in his arms, David felt a renewed sense of purpose. No matter how broken his world seemed, no matter how much pain he carried, he knew he had to fight. For Noah, for their bond, for the future they still had together. The battle with Sarah and Michael was far from over, and David's internal struggle would continue to rage, but, in that moment, holding his son close, he felt a flicker of hope. That bond, unshakable and pure, was something no one could ever take from him. The alumni reunion was held in the banquet hall of a local hotel, its grand chandeliers casting a warm glow over the bustling crowd. Laughter and the clinking of glasses echoed through the room as groups of old friends huddled together, swapping stories of their past and catching up on their present. The air was thick with nostalgia, the kind that brought both comfort and discomfort in equal measure. David entered reluctantly, his steps hesitant as he scanned the room. He had avoided social gatherings like this since his life had been torn apart, but Sam, an old friend, had insisted he attend. He needed the distraction, or so Sam had claimed. Yet, as David adjusted the cuffs of his shirt and offered polite nods to familiar faces, he couldn't shake the gnawing unease in his chest. And then he saw them. Sarah stood by the bar, nervously cradling a glass of wine, her eyes darting around the room until they locked onto his. She froze, the color draining from her face. Standing beside her, in stark contrast, was Michael, exuding a calm confidence that set David's teeth on edge. The sight of the two of them together was enough to send a wave of anger surging through him. David clenched his fists, his heart pounding as the suffocating reality of the situation settled over him. The warm, nostalgic ambience of the reunion now felt like a cruel joke, a reminder of everything he had lost. As if drawn by an invisible force, Michael began making his way toward David. Sarah hesitated, her gaze flicking between the two men, but she didn't follow. Instead, she remained rooted in place, her expression one of helplessness. Michael approached with a measured stride, his hands in his pockets, his demeanor calm and composed. "David," he began, his voice steady but with an undercurrent of authority, "we need to talk." David's jaw tightened, his fists clenching at his sides. "There's nothing to talk about," he replied coldly, his voice barely concealing the fury bubbling beneath the surface. "For Noah's sake," Michael continued, undeterred, "this isn't about us, it's about him. He deserves to know the truth, to have clarity about his life." David's voice rose, sharp and filled with venom. "The truth? The truth is that you've done enough damage, Michael. You don't get to waltz in here and pretend you care about Noah after everything you've done." Michael's calm facade remained, though his eyes narrowed slightly. "I'm not here to fight with you, David. I'm here because this isn't about us, or our egos. It's about doing what's right for Noah." David let out a bitter laugh, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "What's right for Noah? You mean after you helped tear his family apart? After you lied and kept secrets that shattered everything? Don't you dare lecture me about what's right for him." The conversation, once subdued, had now drawn the attention of nearby guests. A hush began to fall over the crowd as curious eyes turned toward the escalating tension. Sarah, still standing by the bar, looked as though she wanted to intervene, but she remained silent, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. Michael sighed, his calm demeanor beginning to crack. "David, I know you're angry." "Anger," he said. "Angry?" David interrupted, his voice booming now. "Angry doesn't even begin to cover it. You had no right to interfere in my family, in my life. And now you think you can just claim Noah like he's some prize you're entitled to?" Michael's jaw tightened, and for the first time his tone sharpened. "I'm not claiming anything, David. I'm trying to step up for him, to be there in a way I wasn't before. You're the one letting your anger cloud what's best for him." David took a step closer, his voice low but laced with fury. "You don't get to decide what's best for him. You don't know him like I do. You weren't there when he took his first steps, or when he was sick and needed comfort. You weren't there when he looked at me and called me Dad. I was there, Michael. Me, not you." The tension between the two men was palpable, the air thick with unresolved pain and anger. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder, the onlookers unsure whether to intervene or let the confrontation play out. Sarah finally took a tentative step forward, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Please, stop. Both of you, this isn't helping." David turned to her, his voice breaking. Don't you dare try to play peacemaker now, Sarah. You're the reason we're standing here, tearing each other apart in front of everyone." Sarah flinched as though struck, her eyes welling with tears. "I never wanted this, David. I never wanted any of this." David's laugh was bitter, his pain spilling out in his words. "Well, congratulations, Sarah. You got it anyway." Unable to take it anymore, David turned on his heel and stormed toward the exit. The crowd parted for him, their hushed whispers trailing after him as he pushed open the doors and stepped into the cool night air. The cold hit him like a slap, but it wasn't enough to quell the fire raging inside him. He paced the empty parking lot, his breaths coming in sharp, uneven gasps. The confrontation replayed in his mind, each word from Michael and Sarah cutting deeper into the wounds that hadn't even begun to heal. He stopped and leaned against his car, his hands gripping the edge of the roof as he stared out into the darkness. The night was silent, the distant hum of traffic the only sound. For a brief moment, David closed his eyes, letting the stillness wash over him. Richard said inwardly, "Being social really helped get the situation handled." Even Marty called AJ to deal with the death of his friend. But the pain remained, the betrayal, the anger, the sense of loss. It all clung to him, suffocating and inescapable. He knew he couldn't outrun it, couldn't escape it, no matter how far he went. And yet, in the quiet of the night, he realized one thing. For Noah's sake, he had to find a way to face it. The knock at the door was hesitant, almost timid, but in the silence of David's apartment, it sounded deafening. He glanced up from the cup of coffee he'd been nursing for hours, his brows furrowing. He didn't need to check who it was. He already knew. Slowly, reluctantly, he stood and walked toward the door. When he opened it, Sarah stood there, her shoulders hunched as if bracing herself for rejection. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face pale. She clutched the edges of her coat tightly, her knuckles white, as though holding on for courage. "David," she said, her voice trembling. "Please, I know I'm the last person you want to see, but I need to talk to you. Just give me a minute." David's jaw tightened, his emotions swirling in a storm of anger, pain, and something he couldn't quite name. For a moment, he considered slamming the door in her face. But then he thought of Noah, his bright eyes, his trust, his laughter, and he stepped aside. "Fine," he said curtly. "You've got a minute." Sarah entered cautiously, her movements tentative, as though she feared the space itself would reject her. She stood awkwardly in the middle of the room, wringing her hands as her gaze flitted around the sparse apartment. The weight of what she'd done seemed to press down on her, making her seem smaller. "David," she began, her voice breaking, "I don't even know where to start. I've been replaying everything over and over in my head, trying to figure out how I let things get this bad, how I hurt you and Noah so deeply." David crossed his arms, leaning against the counter. His eyes were cold, his voice sharp. "Did you find an answer? Or are you here just to throw more excuses at me?" She flinched, the words cutting through her defenses. "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "I'm not here to make excuses. There's no excuse for what I did. I was selfish, weak, and I made mistakes that I can never take back." David's lips pressed into a thin line, his anger barely contained. "Mistakes? You think what you did was just a mistake? Do you even understand what you've done, Sarah? You didn't just betray me. You broke us. You broke our family." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she nodded. "I know, David. I know, and I hate myself for it every single day. I don't expect you to forgive me. Not now. Maybe not ever. But I can't just walk away from this without trying to fix it. Without trying to fix us." David let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "Fix us? Sarah, do you even realize how much you've destroyed? Do you really think an apology is enough to fix this?" Sarah took a shaky step forward, her hands trembling as she reached out, then hesitated, letting them fall back to her sides. "I don't think an apology will fix anything," she admitted. "But I need you to know that I'll fight for this. For you, for Noah. I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I can be better, that I can be the person you and Noah deserve." Her voice broke, and she covered her face with her hands for a moment before looking at him again, her eyes raw and pleading. "David, Noah needs you. He loves you so much. You're his dad in every way that matters. Please, don't let my mistakes take that away from him." David's chest tightened at the mention of Noah, the image of his son, his laughter, his trust, the way he called him dad, rose unbidden in his mind. His resolve wavered, and he looked away, unable to meet Sarah's gaze. "You think I don't know that?" he said, quietly, his voice rough. "You think I don't lie awake every night, wondering how the hell I'm supposed to be his dad after all of this? After finding out he's not mine?" Sarah stepped closer, her voice soft but urgent. "He is yours, David, in every way that matters. He doesn't care about biology. He cares about you. And I know I've ruined so much, but I'm begging you, for him. Don't let this destroy what you have with him." David turned to face her, his eyes filled with pain. "And what about us, Sarah? What do you expect me to do with all of this, with everything you've done?" "I don't expect anything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I need you to know that I'll do anything to make this right, even if it takes the rest of my life." David stared at her for a long moment, his emotions warring within him. Anger, betrayal, love, guilt. They all collided, leaving him exhausted and unsure. But through it all, one truth remained. "Noah." Finally he spoke, his voice hesitant but steady. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Sarah. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you again, but for Noah's sake, I'll try." Sarah let out a shaky breath, her tears falling freely now. "Thank you, David," she said, her voice breaking. "Don't thank me," he said, turning away. "This isn't for you, it's for him." As Sarah nodded and quietly left, the door clicked shut behind her, leaving David alone in the silence. For the first time in weeks, though, the silence didn't feel quite as heavy. It wasn't hope, not yet, but it was a start. David sat on the park bench, watching Noah dart between the swings and the monkey bars, his laughter ringing out across the playground. For the first time in weeks, he felt a flicker of peace. Noah's smile had been rare lately, clouded by confusion and sadness, but today it was bright and genuine. David had made it his mission to ensure more days like this. "Look, Dad," Noah called, climbing to the top of the play structure. His face lit up with pride as he balanced on the narrow beam. "I see you, buddy," David called back, a small smile tugging at his lips. He gave an exaggerated thumbs up, and Noah beamed. Since his conversation with Sarah, David had thrown himself into creating stability for Noah. He rearranged his work schedule to pick him up from school, signed him up for soccer lessons, and even started a weekend tradition of pancake breakfasts. These small rituals were anchors, keeping Noah's world steady in the wake of the upheaval. David also made time to talk to Noah, ensuring he felt safe to express his fears. "It's okay to feel sad or confused," David told him one evening while helping with a school project. "But I'm always here, no matter what." Noah nodded, his small hand clutching David's. "You won't leave, right?" "Never," David said firmly. "I'll always be your dad. That's a promise." After the park, Sarah arrived at David's apartment to pick Noah up. She waited by the door, hesitant but calm as David ushered Noah out with his backpack. "Thanks for letting him stay the extra night," Sarah said softly. David nodded but kept his tone even. "It's for him. Noah needs to feel loved and secure. That's all I care about." Sarah sighed, her gaze falling to the ground. "I know, and I appreciate that we're doing this together. For him." David crossed his arms, his voice firm but without malice. "Let's be clear, this isn't about us. I'm doing this because Noah deserves a family that works, even if it's not perfect. But it doesn't mean I'm ready to forgive, Sarah. Don't read more into it." She nodded, her expression a mixture of guilt and understanding. "I won't. I'll keep trying to be better for both of you." David didn't respond immediately, instead watching Noah climb into Sarah's car. "Let's keep the focus on him," he said finally. "That's what matters." As Sarah drove off, David turned back toward the apartment. He knew there was a long road ahead, but for now, his priority was clear: Noah's happiness, and that at least was something he could fight for. The apartment was quiet, the kind of silence that pressed down heavily, amplifying every creak of the walls and the faint hum of the refrigerator. David sat by the window, the soft glow of the city lights filtering in, casting long shadows across the room. He cradled a mug of coffee in his hands, its warmth grounding him as he stared out at the street below. People moved about their lives, walking dogs, chatting in groups, laughing without a care in the world. It was a scene of normalcy, the kind David had once taken for granted. Now, it felt like something distant, unreachable. He took a slow sip of coffee, letting the bitter taste linger on his tongue, his thoughts swirling like the steam rising from his cup. The pain was still there, raw and jagged, a constant reminder of what had been taken from him. The betrayal, the lies, the sense of security he'd built his life around. It all felt like a distant memory, something he could barely touch anymore. And yet, as he sat there, he realized that the sharp edge of his anger had dulled ever so slightly. His mind drifted to Noah, the light in all this darkness. The boy's laughter at the park, the way he had held David's hand so tightly, his whispered plea, "You won't leave, right?" That moment had stayed with David, a reminder of what truly mattered. David leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. His mind replayed memories of happier times. Sunday mornings spent flipping pancakes. Noah perched on the counter, giggling as he tried to sneak chocolate chips into the batter. He thought of Sarah's laughter back then, the way it had filled their home with warmth. The memories brought an ache to his chest, but they were no longer unbearable. He opened his eyes, staring down at the mug in his hands. Forgiveness. The word lingered in his mind like a distant echo. Could he ever truly forgive Sarah? Could he move past what she had done? David didn't know the answer. He wasn't sure if forgiveness was even possible, let alone reconciliation. But for the first time, he realized that forgiveness wasn't about her. It was about him. Holding on to the anger, the bitterness, it had consumed him, left him exhausted and hollow. Letting go, even just a little, felt like the only way forward. He took a deep breath, exhaling slowly as he allowed himself to acknowledge the small glimmers of hope that had begun to pierce through the darkness. His bond with Noah was unshakable, something even the hardest truths couldn't destroy. And Sarah, though he didn't trust her, didn't know if he could ever trust her again, had shown a willingness to fight for Noah, to try to repair the damage she had done. Healing would take time, that much was clear. David wasn't ready to forgive, not yet. The wounds were too fresh, the scars still forming. But he could see the path ahead, even if it was shrouded in uncertainty. He set the mug down and stood, stretching as he moved toward the small bookshelf by the wall. He pulled out a framed photo of Noah, one of his favorites. It was from a trip to the lake last summer, Noah grinning ear to ear, his face smeared with marshmallow from the s'mores they'd made. David traced a finger along the edge of the frame, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Noah deserves a family that doesn't fall apart," he murmured to himself. The words weren't just a resolution. They were a promise to fight for the moments that mattered, to rebuild something stable for his son, even if it didn't look like the life he had once imagined. David returned to his seat by the window, the photo now resting on the table beside him. He stared out into the night, the quiet hum of the city filling the room. The pain was still there, but so was the hope, and for the first time in a long while, that felt like enough. David stood at the edge of the park, watching Noah run toward the swings, his laughter carried on the cool evening breeze. Sarah stood a few feet away, her hands in her coat pockets, watching their son with a mix of hope and quiet regret. The air between them was neither warm nor cold, filled instead with an unspoken understanding that neither was ready to articulate. Their conversations had become pragmatic, focused on schedules, school events, and ensuring Noah felt loved and supported. It wasn't forgiveness, at least not yet. But it was a step, however small, toward something less fractured. Sitting in his apartment that night, David found himself staring at the photo of Noah on his desk. It was the same one he'd held just days earlier, from their summer trip to the lake. The boy's smile reminded him why he had made the decisions he had. The road ahead is long, David thought, leaning back in his chair. But maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to move forward. He let his thoughts drift, revisiting the moments that had defined the last few months. Sarah's betrayal, Michael's unwelcome presence, the overwhelming pain of seeing his carefully built life crumble. It had all been too much. And yet through it all, there was Noah. A constant reminder of the love that had once existed and could still exist, even in a different form. David reflected on the lessons this journey had taught him. Trust, once broken, wasn't easily repaired, but it wasn't impossible either. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or excusing the past. It meant choosing not to let it dictate the future. He had also learned that love could take on many forms. His love for Noah was unconditional, unshakable, even in the face of revelations that had tested every fiber of his being. And while his love for Sarah was something far more complicated now, he couldn't deny that it still existed, albeit buried under layers of hurt and mistrust. Most of all, he realized that healing wasn't a destination. It was a journey, one step at a time. He didn't have all the answers, and he didn't need to. What mattered was that he was willing to try. The future remained uncertain. Co-parenting with Sarah was a delicate balance, one fraught with reminders of what they had lost and glimpses of what they still shared. Some days the wounds felt fresh, as though they had just been inflicted. Other days the ache was softer, a dull reminder of something that might one day fade. David didn't know if reconciliation was possible. He didn't know if he could ever trust Sarah again, but he knew they both wanted what was best for Noah, and that shared goal was enough to keep them moving forward, however slowly. As David watched Noah asleep in his bed that night, he felt a small sense of peace. The boy's chest rose and fell in steady rhythm, his face serene. It was in moments like these that David felt his purpose most clearly. This is what matters, he thought. Not the past, not the pain, this. He knew the road would be long and difficult. There would be setbacks, days when the weight of it all felt unbearable. But there would also be moments of joy, of connection, of hope. David returned to his chair by the window, the city lights twinkling in the distance. He thought of Noah, of Sarah, of the family they were trying to rebuild in a new, imperfect way. The road ahead is long, he murmured, his voice soft in the quiet room. But maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to move forward. And as he gazed out at the night sky, for the first time in months, he allowed himself to believe that it was possible.